Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Melanie Sanderson. I'm Managing Editor of the Good Schools Guide. We review 1,300 schools in the UK. If you haven't already been to our stand, pop by. We're doing a special offer today, 50% off subscriptions, and we've got all our consultants, or some of our consultants on the stand as well, so do pop by and say hello. I've got with me this afternoon Gavin Horgan, the headmaster of Millfield in Somerset, educated at Stonyhurst and Oxford and former head of Worksop College. Gavin's career has taken him all over the world, notably Argentina and Sri Lanka. And our Good Schools Guide review states that Millfield attracted him with its willingness to stick two fingers up to the rest of the sector. And he's now in his 7th year as head there. On the end, we have John Maguire, who's college headmaster at Bishop Stortford College in Hertfordshire. John has been at Bishop Stortford since 2024 and was formerly executive headmaster at the British School in Bahrain. He's an ISI inspector and currently a lead inspector for the British School Overseas Inspectorate. So he'll be able to offer insights into all sorts of different schools far and wide. And in the middle here, I've got Heather Beeby, who is Deputy Director of Admissions of Lancing College in West Sussex. Heather has been, she's had a stellar career as a teacher, teaching in London, and she actually relocated to teach at Brighton College with her own family, also has been a prep head, but she'll be able to answer some questions straight from the horse's mouth as a family who's relocated. So if we just dive straight in, panel, many parents today here will be weighing up the real benefits of leaving London versus staying, because of course we have fabulous schools here in London. What would you say are the benefits of a school outside of London? Gavin?
I think I can sum it up quite succinctly. Health, physical and mental health, cost. House prices in the southwest are a third of those in London. Space, hundreds and thousands of acres, and that brings diversity of opportunities for children, and typically an approach to academics which is rigorous but is not hot housing.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add to that?
No, that was perfect.
I think I would also, we're only 35 minutes north of London, but I would add to that crime, lack of crime, and the freedom that comes with that, particularly for our day children and our boarders, the ability just to walk into a local town and be safe. That carries a huge amount of weight, and it's the same in both of the other locations here as well.
Great, thank you. And Gavin, you've touched on it already, but would you say that schools outside of London are less pressurised than the schools that we have here in the city?
I think as a sort of massive sweeping generalisation, then yes. That's backed up by figures around mental health and regions. It's backed up by anecdotal evidence that you get from families when they move from one to the other. It's also often within the nature and the ethos of the schools that you find in more rural parts of the country.
Yeah, thank you.
When I was in London, I was responsible for preparing children, mostly girls, for 11 and 12 plus examinations, and that was one of the biggest reasons that we chose to leave London, because of the pressure on those young people at an age where they needed and deserved to still be allowed to be children. The 11 plus system has moved outside London now. I think virtually all schools will operate with assessment at 11, but it's a very different beast outside London. That was tough for young people. So that area in particular, I think it is more pressured in London.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, having worked at a London pressured academic school, I would definitely echo both of those points. But I wouldn't read into less pressured means lower academic standards. That is not the norm. I think the difference is they're still getting outstanding value added, still getting outstanding results, still getting 80-90% of students into their first choice university all around the world, and so some fantastic universities. But what it doesn't come with, as Gavin said, is that pressure of that mental health with it, which isn't just while they're at school, but equally after school. Their ability to cope at university and then thrive beyond, I think, is really where our schools set them up very well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point you make there, because I think one of the biggest questions that I get asked by parents who are considering either these stellar London day schools, that they see at the very top of the league tables in the newspapers, or a school that has a broader spread, is it better for my child to be a big fish in a small pond, or to be surrounded by really super academic people in a very, very top flight environment? And I'd be really interested to hear your take on that, all of you.
Yeah, I think it really, certainly speaking of my own school, it's about the individuality of focusing on the child. What I love about the college is that there is no hierarchy between sport or between academics or between performing arts. You speak to the upper sixth on a day basis, and they'll say, "Oh, so-and-so's absolutely brilliant in the play. Did you see it last night?" They celebrate other children's successes, whereas what I tend to find in those very academic schools, it was all about their ranking, where they performed in their French exam, where they performed in their end-of-year exams, and it was all about that. It was irrespective of how well they did in those other holistic. So I think that all three of us would probably echo that holistic education carries huge weight.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. And Heather, just as an admissions specialist here today, can we talk a little bit about the different pressures in terms of actually getting into schools? Because, of course, parents in London have that constant weight on them, don't they, from when their children are a very young age. Yeah. Is it easier to get into schools outside of London?
I think it's very easy to talk in generalisations, and I think it's impossible to do that. But if we're going to, I think Lancing College, for example, I would describe as softly selective, which is not true of many of the schools in London. So we're looking for children that will thrive in our environment, which means that some children are turned away. But generally speaking, we're looking to welcome pupils into the school if we believe they will thrive with us. And I think that will be true of many of the schools outside London. We're looking for the best in the pupils, and we're not just looking at streams of data, we're looking at the pupil in the school context, the pupil with other pupils over a period of time. So we do have an assessment day, but we have lots of other days when the children can come in. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. Did anyone want to add to that at all? Yes, please.
I would just add that there's often a pattern within London schools when applying for a senior school that the process must start practically when the child is born, and that you must be tutoring them for the age of about 5 onwards, and that becomes the competitive talk of dinner parties, and that if you haven't got it nailed down by year 6 for year 9, then you are in some way a failure. And the senior schools would have you believe that, because that guarantees their intake, which guarantees their funding. And certainly the approach that we would take at Millfield is that from a year 9 place, we don't really want to see you until year 7. And if you must come and talk to us in year 6, then you're absolutely welcome to, of course. But our recommendation would be that first visit is in year 7 with serious intent. And if it is really okay for children aged 10, 9 and 8 to be spending their free hours in the evening after a busy day in the clutches of a tutor, then I think possibly societally we've gone wrong a bit. And I think that you would find outside of London a slightly different approach to school admission.
Very interesting, thank you. Our school, you touched on diversity in the academic sense, Gavin, earlier, and I'd like to sort of delve into that theme a little bit more. In terms of diversity in all senses, obviously, London is a very diverse city, and the schools reflect that. How do you find that side of things outside of London? Heather, should we come to you for that to start with?
We're a very diverse school. We are between 60 and 70% boarding on any given year. 31% of our children are international, and in that international group, 42 nationalities are represented. So in terms of nationality, we're very diverse. We are pretty much 50-50 boys and girls. We have children from London, we have children from the local area, we have children from all over the UK, and we have a transformational bursary scheme as well, which enables pupils who are on very low incomes and have a need for an education like ours to come to us, just a small number every year. So I would say our community is incredibly diverse, and probably as diverse as any school in London.
John, would you say the same at Bishop Stortford?
Yes, I mean, having moved, I think if you want real Gavin would know, international schools, I moved from a school that had 93 different nationalities, which was really difficult to even say welcome in each of those languages. The college, we have 28 different nationalities. Real diversity, but I'd pick up on that point about actually it's also about economic diversity, it's about cultural diversity, and I would also say about neurodiversity as well. Part of that real benefit is about that holistic education, that individual care means that a lot of our children that are neurodiverse can cope very well within the system, much more so than at other schools.
Excellent, thank you. A question, I think, to you, Gavin, this time. You mentioned at the beginning the concept of house prices being much lower and that kind of thing. But also there's a real lifestyle change, which I think some London parents have a bit of a fear of. It's a barrier, isn't it? You know, not having all the coffee shops and the public transport, etc. How do you find that families that move to live quite near to Millfield adapt to that different lifestyle?
Yeah, so 75% of children at Millfield are full boarders and 25% of children are day students. And of that 25, and there's 1,400 children in the senior school, so you can do the maths on that. But of that quarter who are day students, 50% of them have come from London. So we've got a reasonable number. I find it quite humbling, actually, as the head, that I am responsible not just for the education of the children, but for the move of the family as well in that regard. I think the local community has mixed feelings about it in that it drives the house prices up locally. That's sort of an aside, but an important one. I think that Millfield is a vibrant community, so people find community within that day parent community. But also we're the home of Clark's shoes, so you know there's good retail opportunities in Clark's Village if that's what you need. I've been 3 times in the 7 years that I've been head. But also seriously, our proximity to Bath and Bristol mean that actually some of the most vibrant concert venues and some of the best restaurants in the country are available to people relatively quickly. I work in London 1 day a week. I find it mostly doesn't have too many hitches in terms of the transport. I'm up here for a full working day and back. I know that many of our parents are doing that on a relatively regular basis. There are some who hanker after London, but it's very few by the time they've made the move. Lots of them, I say, you moved to Millfield for the education. When your child leaves, I ask them, are you going back to London? And nobody so far has said yes.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. John, did you have anything to add to that with your family? Because you're sort of you're slightly closer to London, aren't you?
We're only 35 minutes from London, so we get the beauty of that. And I would just say it's not the Wild West. You know, it's not barren. There are coffee shops, there are very good restaurants. We're not sort of scratching around to get a cup of coffee. But I think just that the house prices are much lower. The quietness, the calmness, you notice it on the roads. Just get on a bike, and you'll quickly notice how much quieter, nicer the roads are, and the crime. But I think our beauty is 35 minutes into London, so probably once a fortnight our students are coming in to the West End to a show or to an exhibition or things, and our boarders are in all the time on events into the National Gallery to watch Van Gogh and everything like that. So it's most of our parents, 80% of them, will still commute into London. Like Gavin said, none of them want to live back in London.
And do any of them do the reverse commute? Do you have children commuting out to you from the city?
Yes, we have 2. So we run bus routes all the way down to Epping. So Epping's on the Central line, I think. You can get to there. So a lot will come in. A lot of ours will live on the Marylebone Road and areas there, and they will weekly board. So they'll come on a Sunday night with their bags and then go back on a Friday night. So really enjoy their time at school, and I think that's a real benefit.
But would you encourage people to do that journey every day, or does that happen less?
Less. They come from Epping and Loughton and that area every day quite happily, and the bus routes are full from there. But and they maybe a bit further into London to East End, but not many of our parents live in the Liverpool Street area, so it's not just you're coming straight into Liverpool Street and you then have to get across London. So they tend to be more weekly boarders.
Thank you. Heather, did you want to add anything to that?
I just wanted to say that I am one of those parents parents. I relocated my whole family from London to just outside Brighton, and my children flourished. My elder daughter was 5. She had cold after cold after cold. She had eczema, she had hay fever, she had the works, and she just generally wasn't thriving. And really and truly within a week, possibly 2, she was like a different child being outside London. My younger daughter was too young and was just bouncing around all the time anyway. It didn't make much difference to her, except that they both had a big garden. I found it much more hard. I found the pace more difficult. I missed my London friends. I've been outside London for 27 years. I would never go back. But I still have this sneaky day in London, getting a train up. It's very easy from Lancing. I have a sneaky day when I go for a walk. I go to my favourite restaurant, which isn't a fancy one, and I come home again. But yeah, your point about coffee shops, there are loads of great coffee shops and everything else you need. And there's a really good life outside London.
That's fantastic to hear that straight from somebody who's experienced that. I've also experienced the same. Can we touch as well now on the thorny issue of fees? Because obviously everybody that's in the audience today will be thinking about the affordability of an independent education as they move through the next few years. Do we find that fees are slightly more affordable outside of London? And shall I start with you on that, John, as you're the kind of the closest person to the city?
Yes. I think some of the most expensive schools in the country are actually outside London, and probably some of the cheapest. I think I can only really talk about my own school. We were founded 157 years ago, and in our founding charter it says an affordable education, an outstanding education, which is affordable to all families. So that's very close to our heart and really drives our ethos. What I would say is, to always be aware, fully understand fees. I think particularly in the sector at the moment, the low fee doesn't always mean that's what you're going to pay. There will be a lot of add-ons. There'll be computers, there'll be lunches, there'll be uniforms and all of those things. So don't be just attracted, really look under the skin of what is actually included in that fee before making any decision.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. Heather, anything to add to that?
No, nothing really. I think outside London, you do get some very expensive schools. I think what you're talking about really is value for money. And when you look at a school, exactly your point, you must look for value for money, whether inside London or outside London. Is what you're getting worth the money you're spending on it? I would argue, yes.
Excellent, thank you. And that, I suppose, moves us on to, when parents are speaking to schools either here today or when they go to an open day or a private tour, what would you say are the top 3 things, the top questions that they should be asking a school in light of the current, the zeitgeist, the climate? What do parents really need to know that schools aren't telling them proactively? Gavin?
If you're considering sending your child to a boarding school, so staying in London and sending them out to a boarding school, it is essential that you get to the bottom of whether it is actually a boarding school. The numbers of schools that have viable numbers of full boarders at the weekend has dropped off a cliff in the last 10 years. Loads of them will tell you that they're boarding schools and they're not. So you need to get into it by asking, how many boarders are in on a Sunday? Can you explain about the nationality profile of those boarders? What are the activities that will be on offer? Will all-day students be in until what time on Saturday? All of those sorts of things. So I think that's the first thing that I'd recommend. The second thing is about viability. I don't mean to be too much of a doom monger, but banks will be foreclosing on schools that are not keeping up with the relevant terms within the debt that they have. You're all typically pretty financially astute. These are charities and they have to be open about their finances. So you should definitely be looking at their accounts, which are on Companies House, and see what the numbers of pupils are based on the last ISI inspection, and then see whether those figures are reflected in questions that you ask at the school.
That's great advice, thank you. Heather, what
I would
would
say
your
that's
top tips be?
Superb advice, and I wouldn't have been brave enough to say that second point, but that is absolutely true. Having sent my daughter to a school which did close, it is like a bereavement. Be very, very, very careful. I think it's looking for the fit. It's looking for the fit, but you've said what I would say.
John?
Yeah, I know. I think that's it. I think speak to the children. They are remarkably honest. Avoid the headmaster, because we love the school and we tell you all what you want to hear. But the children they don't lie, so they will tell you. So just speak to them and chat to them. Get beeline on them on the tours and all around, and just ask them what do you love about it and it just comes back to that fit and feel. But then trust. The whole of that education relies on trust. There will be moments in your child's career where things go wrong. There always is. You have to trust that the school has got the best interest. So that trust starts from when you're selecting a school and then carries on through until well beyond when they're alumni.
Yeah, I think that's also brilliant advice. And I think something that's a brilliant question to ask is, what happens when things go wrong? Can you give me an example of, a child that's been sanctioned for bad behaviour, or a child that's come up against unexpected learning difficulties? And I think, as a parent, trying to think into the future is also a really valuable thing, isn't it? Looking under the hood. I've just been given the wave that we've only got a few minutes left, so can we open the floor to questions, please, if anyone's got anything to ask our esteemed panel?
Thank you. It's a great talk. I am based on the periphery of London, and my child is open to the idea of boarding inside or outside of London, and also open to the idea of flexi boarding or day school. The question I want to ask is, I think from the edges of London, it probably takes I've worked out that some of the sort of schools in central London takes in excess of an hour to commute to. So actually, the idea of London outside London, if you factor in the commuting time within London, it almost becomes sort of a non-question. So I guess my question is, from your experience, when would you say a daily commute would become too excessive for a year 9 pupil, either by a school bus route or public transport?
Yeah, I think you're quite right. When I worked in North London, some of the children were getting on the buses at 5:30 and not getting off again at 7:30. They were doing a much longer commute. So don't just think in London that will mean a shorter commute at all. I think it's really about your child and knowing what they can cope with. And I would also factor in if they are doing the daily commute, when they are what they're involved in, activities and things like that. I think a lot of the schools will also offer wraparound care, extended day. We offer from 7:15 to 7:15, so we'll give them breakfast, start them off on the day, and then afterwards we'll give them lunch, give them dinner, and then give them let them do their homework and do that. So that will mean that everything they do at home is just actually fun and more relaxing, and to do that. So I think it's looking at that. I think anything above 2 hours would be my feeling of that is a long day for a child, particularly if they finish at 5:30. And you may want to then think, is it better spending 2 hours on the bus, or is it better to actually be in a boarding house for those 2 hours and just come home occasionally?
Heather, did you want to add?
I just think that an hour on a bus, or certainly 2 hours, that time could be so much better spent for your child if they were living in a school or go to a school much closer to home, because childhood goes so quickly, and every second is important. And if they can be outside playing on grass or in trees or just face-to-face with friends having fun, that's a better use of that time than sitting on a school bus. It's not fun for the children, and it's not a good learning experience either. It becomes a drag on their day. So I would say try to look beyond that.
I think the other thing to say is, as a parent, there will be times when you need to be in school, and if you're working particularly, you'll be wanting to go in for parents' evenings, plays, concerts, performances, matches. I should be at a UCAS event for my lower sixth former tonight, and you've got to get there as a parent, and if that journey is encroaching on your time as well, you might find that you're not able to support your child in the way that you want to. You need to be able to finish your work day and then get to your child's school in reasonable time for those things. So I agree with the panel. I would bring it down. If you're in London, I think 45 minutes is enough, to be honest, before you want to start thinking about either a school closer to home, as Heather said, or a boarding option. Any more questions from anybody else? Yeah, come on.
Hi, thank you. Really good panel. Just on the kind of the pressure of the entrance exams, and you know, you're all saying it's less outside of London. I don't really understand why. Is it that you have so many more places? You have so few, like less people applying, or like the academic, like the CAT score or whatever required to get through is lower? I don't really understand. You still have to do the 11 plus or an entrance exam. You still have to have an interview and qualify. Why is the pressure less?
Who would like to, Gavin, would you like to take that?
Yeah, happy to take that. Partly the pressure is less because you guys create less pressure. And I think that probably is a serious point, which is that, it comes back to there is too much overheated tutoring by parents of children because that's what everyone just does. So that's the first piece, which I think is real. The second piece is that often the academic entry bar is lower. Or put another way, schools outside of London care about much more than the child's ability in English, mathematics and verbal reasoning. Also, I suspect there is less demand for places, and so I think that's probably relevant too. So I think it's a combination of all of those factors. But the middle one about what our schools prize versus what is prized, often in a smaller environment where they can only choose to focus on one thing or a couple of things, is probably the biggest reason for me.
Thank you.
We do a lot of our testing outside in their prep schools, so our children sit CAT tests in their prep schools, CAT 4 tests in their prep schools, so they don't do that bit of it with us. The IRCB pre-test is also done away from the public school. So we invite our children in. They do a piece of writing for us. It's independent writing, it's creative or factual writing, critical reasoning type stuff. But then we give them a day of activities that we hope they will enjoy. Because ultimately we want them to come to our school. And in those activities, you can learn so much from being with a child and watching that child. Does that child respond to the other children? Does that child love it? Does that child laugh? And we're trying all the time to look at the whole child, because sometimes you'll find a child whose score on CAT 4 might not be super brilliant, but is actually a fantastic young person. And we've welcomed children into our school who, by some measures, on the CAT tests, wouldn't be eligible for a selective school, but who have turned out to be utterly brilliant. In fact, a long time ago, when I was head of another school, I sent a boy who was a top scholar to Lancing College, and when they tested his CAT test, because in those days they did it afterwards, his CAT tests were nowhere near any of the other scholars. He just had a superb attitude. So we're trying to look at the whole child as well, and I think that's important.
Excellent, thank you. I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you.